Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskrityam.
Narayana Namaskrityam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudire.
Tato Jayamudire
Nashtaprayesu Abhadresu.
Nashtaprayesu Abhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke.
Bhagavati Uttam Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati
Naistiki.
Reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, titled The Three Modes of Material Nature. And today's verse is the last verse of this chapter, this beautiful chapter, which is titled The Three Modes of Material Nature, verse number 27. Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Amrita swabhayasya cha.
Amrutasya vyasya vasa.
Sasvatasya cha dharmasya.
Shasvatasya dharmasya.
Sukhasaya kiti shaya cha.
Sukhashaikantikasya cha.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Amrita swayasai cha.
Amrutasya vyasya cha.
Sasvatasya dharmasya.
Sasvatasya cha dharmasya.
Sukhasaikantikasya cha.
Sukhasya ekantikasya cha.
Any Prabhuji would like to read or Mataji would like to read?
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Amrutasya vyasya cha.
Amrutasya vyasya cha.
Sasvatasya cha dharmasya.
Shasvatasya dharmasya.
Sukhasya ekantikasya cha.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Amrutasya vyasya cha.
Amrutasya vyasya cha.
Shasvatasya cha dharmasya.
Shasvatasya dharmasya.
Sukhasaikantikasya cha.
Sukhasya ekantikasya cha.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Amrutasya vyasya cha.
Amrutasya
vyasya cha.
Shashvatasya cha dharmasya.
Shasvatasya cha dharmasya.
Sukhasaikantikasya cha.
Sukhasya ekantikasya cha.
Thank you so much. Word by word meaning. Brahmana.
Brahmana.
Of the impersonal Brahma Jyoti.
Of the impersonal Brahma Jyoti.
He certainly.
Certainly.
Pratishtha, the rest.
Pratishtha, the rest.
Aham, I am.
Aham, I am.
Amritasya.
Amrutasya.
Of the immortal.
Of the immortal.
Avyayasya.
Avyayasya.
Of the imperishable.
Of the imperishable.
Cha also.
Cha also.
Also.
Shashvatasya,
Shashvatasya.
of the eternal.
Of
of
the
the
Eternal.
Cha and
Cha
Cha
and
And
Dharmasya,
Dharmasya.
Dharmasya.
of the constitutional position.
Of the
Of the
constitutional position.
constitutional position.
Sukhasya,
Sukhasya.
Sukhasya.
of happiness.
Of
Of
happiness.
happiness.
Aikantikasya,
Ekantikasya.
Ekantikasya.
ultimate.
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 Cha,
Cha
also.
Also.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai.
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 And I am the basis of
And I
And
am
I am the
basis
basis of
the impersonal Brahman,
the
the
impersonal
impersonal Brahman,
which is immortal,
which is immortal,
immortal,
imperishable,
imperishable,
and eternal,
and
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 eternal,
eternal,
and is the constitutional position
and is
and is the constitutional position
of ultimate happiness.
of ultimate happiness.
ultimate happiness.
Can someone, Prabhujis or Matajis, would like to read this page?
The constitution of Brahman is immortality, imperishability, eternity, and happiness. Brahman is the beginning of transcendental realization. Paramatma, the super soul, is the middle, the second stage in transcendental realization. And the supreme personality of Godhead is the ultimate realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, both Paramatma and the impersonal Brahman are within the Supreme Person. It is explained in the 7th chapter that material nature is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord impregnates the inferior material nature with fragments of the superior nature, and that is the spiritual touch in the material nature. When a living entity conditioned by this material nature begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises up to the Brahman conception of the Supreme. This attainment of the Brahman conception of life is the first stage in self-realization. At this stage, the Brahman realized person is transcendental to the material position, but he is not actually perfect in Brahman realization.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Anyone else would like to read this page?
if he wants, he can continue to stay in the Brahman position and then gradually rise to realization and then to the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many examples of this in Vedic literature. The 4 Kumaras, they were situated first in the impersonal Brahman conception of truth, but then they gradually rose to the platform of devotional service. One who cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman runs the risk of falling down. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman without going further with no information of this Supreme Person, his intelligence is not perfectly clear. Therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there is the chance of falling down if one is not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Vedic language, it is also said, Raso vai rasam hi evayam lab, lab, labdhavan vanadi bhavati. When one understands the personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure, Krsna, he actually becomes transcendentally blissful. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.7.2.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Anyone else would like to read this page?
The Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, and when a devotee approaches him, there is an exchange of these 6 opulences. The servant of the king enjoys on an almost equal level with the king And so the eternal happiness, imperishable happiness, and eternal life accompany devotional service. Therefore, realization of Brahman or eternity or imperishability is included in devotional service. This is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. The living entity, although Brahman by nature, has the desire to lord it over the material world, and due to this he falls down. In his constitutional position, a living entity is above the three modes of material nature, but association with the material nature entangles him in the different modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Due to the association of these three modes, his desire to dominate the material world is there. By engagement in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, he is immediately situated in the transcendental position, and his unlawful desire to control material nature is removed.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Let me read this last page. Uh, Therefore, the process of devotional service, beginning with hearing, chanting, remembering, the prescribed 9 methods for realizing devotional service should be practiced in the association of devotees. Gradually, by such association, by the influence of the spiritual master, one's material desire to dominate is removed, and one becomes firmly situated in the Lord's transcendental loving service. This method is prescribed from the 22nd to the last verse of this chapter. Devotional service to the Lord is very simple. One should always engage in the service of the Lord, should eat the remnants of the foodstuffs offered to the deity, smell the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, see the places where the Lord had his transcendental pastimes, read of the different activities of the Lord, his reciprocation of love with devotees, chant always the transcendental vibrations. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare.
and observe the fasting days, commemorating the appearance and disappearance of the Lord and his devotees. By following such a process, one becomes completely detached from all material activities. One who can thus situate himself in the Brahmajyoti or the different varieties of the Brahman conception is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the three modes of material nature. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnana-Jana-Shalakaya
ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया
Chakshurmilitam
चक्षुरुन्मिलितं
Yena
येन
Tasmai
तस्मै
Shri Gurave
श्रीगुरवे
Namo
नमः
Sri Chaitanya
श्रीचैतन्यामनोभीष्टं
Manobhishtam
स्थापितं
Yena
येन
Bhutale
भूतं
Svayagrupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru
वन्देऽहं
Shri Padakamalam
श्रीगुरुश्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं
Namami
वैष्णवं
Shri
च
Rupam
ईरूपं
Sagrajatam
साग्रजातं
Sahagana
सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं
Ram
तं
Sajivam
सजीवं साद्वैतं
Advaitam
सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं
Devam Sri
श्रीराधाकृष्ण
Radha Krishna
पादान्
Sagana
कृष्ण
Lalita Sri
विभूषितं
Visakham
हे
He
कृष्णा
Krishna
करुण
Karuna
सिन्धो
Sindhu
दीनबन्धो जगत्पते
Jagatpate
गोपेश
Gopesha Gopika
गोपिकान्त
Gopika
राधाकान्त नमस्तुते अकाञ्चन
Namaste
गौराङ्गी राधा वृन्दावनेश्वरी
Vrindavaneshwari
वृषभानुसुते
Saraswati
देवी प्रणमामि
Mami Hari
वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा
Krishna
कृष्ण
Krishna
कृष्ण
Krishna Hare
हरे
Hare
हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
So thank you so much for joining this Sangha. And this is the last verse of the 14th chapter. And this chapter is very, very powerful because the technicalities of the three levels of realization, the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan realization is explained. Whenever somebody in ISKCON ends up asking us what are the three ultimate truths, we should always refer to this verse where it talks about the three levels of truth, which is the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And many people think that they are one and the same. But here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is beautifully explaining that the Brahman or the impersonal Brahmajyoti has actually come from me. Brahmano hi pratisthaham, because I am the installer. Pratisthaham means installer. This Brahman, which is referred to this glow associated with the Brahman. Brahman technically is nothing but soul. Anybody who understands the soul within us, he is referred to Brahma Janati Brahmana. That is referred to Brahman. We're not talking about Brahman. We're not talking about the Varnashram Brahman. That is Brahman, B-R-A with a A. But here we're talking about Brahman. The Brahman or the impersonal Brahmajyoti is installed by Krishna. Krishna is saying here, Brahmano hi pratisthaham. That means he has installed that Brahman, and he is the responsible. He is, and that Brahman is immortal. The soul is immortal, and soul is imperishable. Soul is Amritasya, of the immortal. Avyayasya, soul is imperishable, and Saswata is eternal. The soul has the quality which is immortal, is imperishable, and is eternal. And whoever has understood this, whoever through the association of the devotees, or through a good spiritual master, or through the self knowledge acquired through the process of going through these scriptures written by bona fide sources, and those who have understood this Brahman, where they have escaped. Last time we talked about the escape velocity. One who has escaped these modes and has achieved that Brahman realization, he is Sukhasya. That means he's full of happiness. And that happiness is not a small happiness or a medium happiness. It is Aikantikasya. That is the ultimate happiness. So Krishna is beautifully explaining these things. So if you really understand this verse, you will realize the first line where Krishna is saying, he is the installer, he is the source of Brahman. And that Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. And one who has understood this Brahman, or who has practiced the process of escaping from this modes of material nature and gone to this Brahma Bhuta platform, or what we call the Brahman realized platform, is Sukhasya, is full of happiness. And that happiness is the ultimate happiness. That's in a nutshell this verse is. But the beauty of this verse is when we go through the lotus lips of our spiritual Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada has taken it to another level by explaining the three fundamentals, which is the initial or the first realization, or the Brahman realization, which is typically realized by the Gyanis. Then the second level, as Srila Prabhupada writes beautifully, is the Paramatma realization, which is often done by the yogis. And the final realization, the third one, is the Supreme Person realization, the Bhagavan realization, and that is understood by Bhaktas. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, Gyanis, Yogis, Bhaktas. Very simple. But once we understood this relationship as beautifully explained by Srila Prabhupada, we'll be very clear as to which is the topmost realization. Thinking that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a spark is actually a not right understanding. Thinking something which is not what it is, thinking something which is below what it is not giving the right sense of appreciation for that thing. And then thinking that it is an impersonal, localized expansion like Paramatma is also not right. Therefore, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say right. It's not complete. It's incomplete. But the right way to understand the Supreme, as explained in this beautiful purport, is to understand that he is a person, he has qualities, he has quantities. Qualitatively, he and his marginal energies of the Lord, like the jivas, are one and the same qualitatively, but quantitatively, he is omnipresent, omniscient, but we are not. And once that understanding is very much there, then we have achieved the process. And then Srila Prabhupada goes on to quote from the scriptures. And then here he talks about the 6 opulences. And then he talks about what the process is. The process of 9 steps of hearing, chanting, remembering, and then gradually by such association with devotees and the influence of spiritual masters, then we try to acquire this beautiful understanding. And then eventually we offer everything we eat. We eventually eat to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the remnants are eaten by us as prasad or foodstuffs. And then we smell the flower, we offer as arati, and then chant the holy name. So the process is so beautifully explained in this verse. So the entire Krishna consciousness is kind of power packed in this verse, where Krishna is the source of impersonal Brahman, or the installer, Pratisthanam, he uses, which is immortal and imperishable and is eternal and is the constitution position. And who has understood that is deriving the ultimate bliss. So there is a process of elevation we're talking about, right? So what is the process of elevation? So you control the senses. When you control the senses, you are not truly dominating or lauding it. Like most of the time, you're trying to dominate your family, your kids, your wife or husband. That is not going to give you happiness. So once you recognize that these aspects have a lower tendency to derive happiness by trying to lord it over, then you let it go and derive that sense of humility, and you control your senses. Do not get angered, do not have um, attraction for the illusory energy of the Lord. You have internal derivation of pleasure or sukha. And then you start chanting, as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, you start deriving pleasure in chanting, tapasukha. And then you meet with the exalted devotees. And when you meet with exalted devotees, these devotees are always in thinking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam or hearing about Srimad Bhagavatam, instead of talking about the midterm elections, instead of talking about this and that, which is very mundane and which is not everlasting. When people start talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his Leelas and his devotees, it is it takes you in the form of elevation, where you're trying to meet with exalted people. These exalted people, they are not perturbed by happiness or sadness as you and me think as happiness and sadness. They're immensely related. They're constantly thinking about the Lord. Whatever they end up doing is in relation to the Lord, and and then gradually you start receiving the Brahmajyoti or the effulgence of the Lord, and then you transcend into Vaikuntha. And still people go to Vaikuntha based on their prarabdha karma. And this Vaikuntha is nothing but a place where there is no kuntha or no sadness, and where you end up serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by serving, you derive various rasas, Vaschalya rasa, or various different mellows for the Lordship, thinking about the Lord. And you still can derive all of that here as well, because Srila Prabhupada says, wherever there is Krishna consciousness, you can make that place Vaikuntha. You can make that place the Dham of the Lord. And then, and that particular Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, wherever he resides, whether he resides in the temple in Plainfield, he resides, he is the Purna Brahma or Sanatan Purna Brahma. He is the wholesome, and we are part and parcel of that whole. And then, and anytime you see a river, the river is always marching ahead with a tendency to meet the ocean. The intent is to meet the whole, not be fragmented. So especially we'll see when the catchment area of the river is going to meet the ocean, the river is running fast, is running furious, and is running in a way so that the river, if I want to make the river a she for the moment, and she is running fast to meet with where it belongs. We are part and parcel of the whole, and if we do not have the yearning to meet with the whole, we are truly missing something. So the natural tendency of the river is not to go and get into a drain. The natural flow of the river, if you see, if you go to the streams, if you go to this national parks, you will see that wherever, if you go closer to Atlantic Ocean, in New Jersey, we have access to Atlantic Ocean, and there are many tributaries in New Jersey coastline, which is trying to meet the Atlantic Ocean. And if you go to we have been to a national park in one of the uh, coastal towns, and you'll see that where there is that yearning to meet the ocean, the speed, the enthusiasm of the river is tremendous. And at the time, the river doesn't want to go and join a drain. So if we, being part and parcel of the Lord, not assuring that sense of realization where we don't recognize us to be part of the whole, and we do not have the yearning to hear about Krishna Katha or meet with the devotees or relish Krishna Prasad anytime, then we are missing something. And that is exactly what this verse is trying to say. And we should recognize. So last verse, if you remember, we spoke about abhya vicharena. That means unalloyed. That means without fail. And this is also a Hindi word which is used in such a way that whenever a person has a relationship with multiple people, that means that is just the opposite of vicharena, means the person has has thoughts of so many people. But abhyacharya means he's fixed his mind not with the 33 crores of demigods as it is explained. He's focused on the whole, he's focused on the root, not on the branches. And then when you build that unalloyed devotional service, that will lead you to parabhakti. Parabhakti, we have to understand a little bit. Parabhakti is, and there is two kinds of bhakti, aparabhakti and parabhakti. Aparabhakti is when the yogi, we all are yogi in some form, we are bhakti yogis. We're focusing on rituals, the yajnas, the objects, images, ceremonies in worshiping the divines. There is nothing wrong in that, by the way. We're just trying to distinguish between this. We all are at different stages of our sadhana, and the parabhakti, for the sake of definition, is when our mind is very much focused with rituals, objects, images, ceremonies. That is aparabhakti. But here, if we are having that unalloyed devotional service, we develop that parabhakti. Parabhakti is the devotion which transcends the world, and the yogi strives for unition, and he ends up doing devotional service. So that he doesn't want to really come back to this world. He really wants to merge, and he really wants to escape from this material world and go back and join. So that is a very, and the examples are very much examples that we'll just take an example here. Bharat Maharaj, as you know, he was having a very, he was exalted person. He was having a lot of wonderful, he had an affection to a deer. and then next life he became deer because he was having tremendous attraction to a deer. And but in the next birth after the deer, he was born as Jada Bharat. Jada Bharat is somebody who can speak, but actually he's so much knowledgeable. He is so much up there. He is so much Brahman realized that he is pretending that he is always muted. He is never speaking. He's behaving like Jada. And then, long story short, some dakus, smugglers, they caught him, and they were about to, and the way he was behaving with the dakus were perturbed. Uh, he was unaffected. Whatever the dakus or the smugglers wanted, he would say, "Yeah, that's right." He was always in a trance. And finally, when the dakus said, "We are going to kill you to give you as an offering to Ma Kali," then Jadabharat agreed. And when it was about to happen, Mother Kali realized that this is a Brahman realized person. This person is a very, very good devotee, a supreme devotee of the Lord. So she came out and killed all the dakus and then asked for forgiveness. So the devotees or the personalities who are tremendously attached to thinking about the Lord, doing devotional service of the Lord, they become very much detached from these material things. And when they end up getting detached from the material things, they are not perturbed by this little promotions, this, that, and they tend to insulate themselves from the issues which are mundane in nature, and they have a higher taste in their life to uh, focus their attention to. So, so this verse you might have heard before, and we talked about it. This is one of the Chatur if you have, if you can unmute, you might have heard of BMW, right? What is
Yes.
spiritual BMW? Can anyone speak? Unmute. If you might have already know, you all are brilliant devotees. Do you know what is BMW in spiritual sense?
Body, mind, and W. I forgot.
Yeah, wonderful.
Body, mind, and I forgot the W probably.
No problem. You have got 2 out of 3 right. It is body, mind, and words. Okay.
Words.
And that's exactly what Krishna is saying in the last line. Krishna is saying, Sukhasya, of happiness. And then what kind of Sukha? Aikantikasya. That means it's the ultimate happiness. And that happiness is nothing but when you basically do Machita Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Kathayantasya Mam Nityam Tushyanti Charamanticha. If you see, Machita Madgata Prana means what? Machita and Gata Prana. That prana and chitta, you are engaging, okay? That is nothing but your internal action. But externally, what is happening? Bodhayanta Parasparam, that means these devotees are talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead among each other. Kathas Chamam Nityat, so they're talking, they're preaching, they're feeling, and finally, Tusyan teacher Amanticha. That means they're feeling the bliss by talking about the Lord, preaching about the Lord, distributing Bhagavad Gita of the Lord. And so the first is action, which is in one line, Machita Matkata Prana, engaging their mind and engaging their body and mind. But the output is in 3 lines. The output is so magnificent that they're so happily preaching, they're happily talking. Oh, Krishna is wearing a beautiful blue dress today. Mother Radharani is wearing this nice ornament. Lord Jagannath is wearing this, beautiful, his Sudarshan Chakra on his left is so beautiful. So they're constantly in bliss, in pleasure. So when you devote your body in action and your emotion in the form of mind, then you'll feel so much happiness that you can only keep on expressing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And those words are golden words, which you keep hearing again and again and again about the Supreme Personality of Godhead again and again. So that's why they say devotees are the most happiest person in the world. They're first, they're not attached to these material issues, and they're trying to detach themselves. And what are they focusing on? They're focusing their body and mind on doing devotional service. And then finally, they're deriving pleasure by becoming so blissful. They're constantly talking about the Lord. So this verse, which is the last verse of chapter 14, and this verse, which is a Chaturshloki, which we also spoke about, sometimes in the past, because this is a systematic study of Bhagavad Gita, that you see Krishna is coming back to the same thing again and again and again. He is reiterating the same thing, that whenever you recognize that Supreme Brahman who got installed by me and end up doing devotional service, you will derive bliss, which is ultimate. And back in the middle chapters, where the confidential uh, aspect of the Lord is described by the Lord himself, he's saying, if you end up doing this devotional service, you would get happiness. You see, 10.9 and 14.27, so close. You can only recognize if you have this, Bhagavad Gita discussion forum, where you see there are different points. And if you really want to do the spiritual BMW, you'll be very blissful, not by buying a 50,000 car, but by doing devotional service and devoting your body, mind, and words, you'll derive a lot of bliss. So we can go on and on, but what a verse to end our chapter 14 in our systematic study of Bhagavad Gita in our Bhakti Vriksha. So I'd like to welcome any question, comments from you, if you have.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Dandavat
Krishna.
Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Vaishnavas. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. That was very encapsulating of what is Brahman. Few points, Prabhuji, which when you were speaking, I thought we should clarify from a concept perspective. Is this Brahman word is used very like how what we call in our industry in IT is polymorphism, right? The same word is used differently here also in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhuji, Brahman. So that's one point which I wanted to delineate here, the differences, Prabhuji. The Brahman is also the unmanifested form of the Lord's energy, Prabhuji. He clearly says in another verse that I am the hands and I am the legs and I am the body of this kind of universe, right, Prabhuji? So that is also Brahman, Prabhuji. And as you have rightly explained here the Brahman is basically the self, which is. So what I want to point out the difference is that the Brahman word has been used in that context also. So Brahman is also the unmanifested energy of the Lord, which is, it's the Lord's energy only, but it is unmanifested. But whereas the Brahman, which we are talking in this verse, is the manifest energy, the soul, which is the marginal energy, that is inert energy, Prabhuji. That other Brahman is inert energy. And this is the marginal energy which can move to the state of eternity, or it can move into the other lower states, depending upon again the practice. So that one point I want to differentiate the Brahman, Prabhuji, in what here, as you explained, and what the verse says is the soul, which is basically eternal. And as Prabhupada here clearly said that the soul is eternal and blissful and happy, which is nothing but, since we are a part and parcel, we are, and Lord Krishna, Purna Purushottam, like Jagannath ji is Sachitananda Vigraha, right? He is always He's always eternal. Like in the last verse we studied, that we are just a subset of that energy. So our qualitatively, our characteristic is also blissful, happiness, and knowledge, right? Eternity, blissful, and knowledge. Sachitananda Vigraha. So this soul is also a part, and that's why we try to go, but only thing is we get distracted. Our definition of happiness should not be changed with the local conditions, means where we are, basically in whichever planet we are or wherever we are, our circumstances, it should be eternal. And second point is how to attain this, and also Prabhuji, one more point which I want to, before I go to my second point. Here Prabhupada has clearly explained, and as you have mentioned in the synopsis, um, when we go to the Brahman realization, that is not the ultimate. That is what this verse is also telling. There is a chance of fall down. Why? Because we have not surrendered. That is our main problem with the Brahman realization. In Brahman realization, we have not surrendered ourselves. Surrendered ourselves in the sense, today only I was listening to Bhakti Charu Maharaj, that surrender means we are not obedient. What are we not obedient to? We are not obedient to be a subservient of the Lord. We still think that we want to lord it in some subtle form, if not in the gross form. We want to lord it over the material nature. That is why Prabhupada clearly writes that there is a chance of falling down from the state of Brahman realization also. But if the next stage is basically where we realize super soul within us. Once we have transcended the flaw of the Brahman, is we still believe in impersonal. Like for example, people say universe is God. There is nothing called God, but it's universe, right? That is nothing but Mayavadi, or the impersonal um, approach to the God Lord's energy. And the second is, we are realizing, we are seeing in every soul there is, we see in our soul there is a Vishnu in our heart. Similarly, we see Vishnu in all other hearts also. So that is the second stage. And the third stage is where we completely surrender ourselves, and we our only servitorship, our only, in some mellow, whatever that mellow we have acquired, in that mellow we do the servitorship, and that's why we never fall from there. That is the final stage. That is one point. So how to attain this, which how to attain this state of Sachitananda Vigraha, is through the practice of devotional service, Prabhuji, which in technical terms, it is a Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Basically, Sambandha is basically we try to understand what is our relationship with the God, and Abhideya is the actual implementation of our practices to reach this stage, as Prabhupada has really explained, that we eat the remnants of the food, we smell the flowers, we with our hands we do the service like cleaning the temple and all. So this is the Abhideya part of it, Prabhuji. How do we? So we get the maximum bliss. Even if we get $1 million, we may not have that bliss, right? The bliss which we get from this is through Abhideya. And Prayojana is finally the relationship. What happens when by doing this? What is the ultimate aim of this? We get the final eternal relationship. We understand our relationship, that what is our spiritual constitutional position. That is what we get the ultimate with this. So these lead to the Brahman. Prabhuji.
Yeah. So
BMW part, Prabhuji.
yes,
I am sorry.
yeah,
The
staying with
BMW part, which I like very much, the example you have given. One thing I want to tell is that, Prabhuji, what I just want to, those who know Hindi, we used to say, right? Tan man dhan. We should do everything with tan man dhan. That is what this BMW part, which you have explained. Here, tan man, the dhan here is for a eternal, is the preaching, the words, basically, Prabhuji. These are the words which we have to tushyanti cha ramanti cha, always what Saturday in Bhakti Vrikshas we do, that we try to understand the spiritual edification of the science of Krishna consciousness, or the Bhagavad Gita, which is a song. As Bhagavad Gita is not related to any religion, but it is a general song. So these are some points which I
So
wanted
thank
to
you so
discuss.
much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. So and Priyanka Mataji, you have a question about the 6 opulences, right? And the 6 opulences, so is essentially referred. See, whenever you have dhan, as Prabhuji was mentioning, dhan, you say dhanavan, right? Likewise, if somebody has bala or power, he is referred as balavan, right? So likewise, Parashar Muni is saying that a person who possesses bhaga is Bhagavan. So the 6 opulences, what you are asking about, is somebody who possesses strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, and beauty. But if you have this 5, then you can't renunciate. Because once you have this 5, you can't renunciate, because you can't give it up. So the 6th quality which is needed to be Bhagavan, and these qualities are in 100%. Nobody is more stronger than the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Nobody is doesn't have more fame than Krishna. So no one has more wealth than Krishna. No one has more knowledge than Krishna. No one has more beautiful than Krishna. And at the same time, nobody is more renunciate than Krishna. And for that, we had a pastime which we discussed in a prior Bhakti Vriksha. So does that answer your question, Mataji?
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. So this Brahman is a very technical topic, but Prabhuji mentioned about one thing which I want to touch on is when you get into a Brahman level, then you go into Paramatma, then you go into Bhagavan. There is a chance to fall down because you are working on the premise of knowledge, which is exactly the 4 Kumaras were doing. The 4 Kumaras wanted to stay celibate. The 4 Kumaras from Brahma wanted to stay celibate, and they wanted to gain more knowledge until they were confronted on the gates of Vaikuntha by Jayavijaya. And when the scuffle broke out, Vishnu came from inside and realized that the scuffle broke out, and as some subordinate of Vishnu, Jayavijaya, having participated in the scuffle, Lord Vishnu took their dosha or the fault and said sorry on behalf of Jayavijaya to the 4 Kumaras. At the time, with that humility from Vishnu, with the smell of the aroma touching the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of Vishnu, entering into the nostrils of the 4 Kumaras, that transformed them from Gyanis to Bhaktas. They were actually Jnana yogis, they were Brahman realized, but they truly become devotees. So this transformations, which is there are many actually. There is another pastime I can relate to, but we'll keep it for some other day because the time is short. So these things about different levels, we all are in a journey, but the more and more we keep this knowledge to our hearts and then practice devotion is better. More and more, sometimes what happens is there'll be people who will be asking a lot of questions around so many different things. So like Prabhupada in one situation have said, are you interested about the taste of the mango, or you're worried about, how the mango was grown, and and there is this nice um, proverb about the mangoes. So the essence is these are theoretical concepts, but at the end of the day, if you are focused on the Bhakti Yoga platform, which is uh, so nicely established by His Divine Grace, it is going to be better for us. But if when we have doubt on this, we can always come back and discuss. But essentially, if you have realized that the Brahman realization is the lowest form of realization and the devotional service of the Lord is the topmost realization, I think we have just overcome it, and that will help us. Okay, Prabhuji? Any other question or comments? Thank you, Bhakti Ratnakar Prabhu, for your comments.
Hare Krishna.
I think, Prabhuji, the one part, the unalloyed devotion part, I think it looks like very tough. So, I mean, someone like Prabhupada and our gurus, so everyone, but the way it has been explained, it is kind of not having any iota of desire kind of thing, right, Prabhuji? So that is what unalloyed devotion is all about.
True. And the devotees in our movement who wait in waiting list for a long time to get into the sannyas level, they live everything, they have celibate all their, whatever time frame they have detached themselves, and they have left everything and they're traveling all around, and they're not really relying on the comforts the newer age is giving us. Yes, that comes. So our process of identifying those sannyasis in ISKCON has been a very tough thing, but there are still people who are interested in going there. So there is hope, Prabhu, that there are people who are becoming devotees at various different levels, and they constantly are becoming attracted to the detachment process. In one side, there is material people who are going to TV, this, that, movies, but in one side, but the spiritualism is still awake, and there is still enthusiastic people. Whenever we have, wonderful sannyasis and brahmacharis in our movement who are sending these wonderful videos, it's very inspiring, and there is still a lot of demand for becoming good in this world, and we should take that as an opportunity. Okay, bro?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Any other comments, reflections? Zoom user, Prabhu, if you want to have any question, and was that useful, the discussion we had, or you have any comments? If you would like to introduce us to you, it'll be wonderful. We'll get to know you, and we will try to give a lot of association, because it's all about association. You're muted in case you want to unmute and explain, how, if this is beneficial in any way, if you have any process improvement or any comments.
Prabhuji is asking to the person who kept the name as Zoom user.
Yeah, it's okay. That's fine. There are as
Hello,
long as
Prabhuji. I think this is me,
Hare
Zoom
Krishna
user.
Prabhu.
Vipin
Hi.
Prabhu. Haribol.
Yeah,
Vipin Prabhu, welcome Vipin Prabhu. Was the conversation useful today, Prabhu? Were you hearing the
yeah,
conversation?
yeah, Prabhuji. It's a really good. I'm enjoying this one. I'm getting a lot of things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vipin Prabhu. We welcome you all the time. So please join regularly, and we will go into chapter 15 next week, and we will have more depth. We are basically trying to look at the Supreme Personality of God and Krishna's verses through the eyes of our Acharya. And those eyes were brilliant eyes. And more we dwell on it, get different points of view, and we learn from each other. We are not perfect. We are just trying to learn. And this is a journey. We all are in different phase of this journey. So as long as we get more association, it will be wonderful. Okay, Prabhu. Any other comments? So we can end here. So please attend
Prabhuji, do
temple
you want to
programs.
talk about the Gita Jayanti? Do you want to talk about that, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu. So Gita Jayanti is actually on the Mokshada Ekadasi day, which is falling on the 3rd of December. Tomorrow, the flyer which I sent is not Gita Jayanti. It's a pre-trip to Gita Jayanti where Prabhuji is going to do a yagya where he is going to recite the top verses. And also he is going to seek sankalpa for distributing this Shastradan, right? So tomorrow, that flyer, what you got in the Bhakti Vriksha WhatsApp group, that's not Bhakti Gita Jayanti. That's a pre-trip to Gita Jayanti. Gita Jayanti is falling on the Saturday, 3rd of December. We're going to have a huge event. It's going to be bigger. We're going to send a big splash. But to Bhakti Ratnagar Prabhu's point, tomorrow is going to be a yagya, and during yagya they do sankalpa. People do sankalpa, devotees do sankalpa, and as a process of sankalpa, you would promise that, hey, tomorrow, for example, I'm going to take a sankalpa to distribute 2 boxes in person. So I'm going to buy 2 boxes, and I'll keep those 2 boxes in my car, and I'll go somewhere, Sabji Mandi or Apna Bazaar. I'll stand out and distribute. If somebody gives money, that's fine. But as I have sponsored by paying to the temple, I can choose to distribute. And if there is Lakshmi, you can give it back to temple. Or if you want to give it away, you're basically using this Gita Jayanti Marathon to spread the message of the Lord. So that's tomorrow.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
But tomorrow is not Gita Jayanti. Just want to make it clear. There might be confusion. The real Gita Jayanti is on the 3rd of December. If you look at our ISKCON of Central New Jersey calendar, it's 3rd of December. But tomorrow there is a pre-trip. Please come. Attending Yagya is very purifying. So attend and do Sankalpa. Okay. So we'll end here by thanking all of you for becoming part of this Yagya of acquiring knowledge through the systematic study of Bhagavad Gita, through this Bhakti Vriksha, and all your questions, comments, reflections are very, very precious to us. So let's thank each other and offer our humble obeisances at the lotus feet of Vaishnavas by saying Vancha Kalpataru
Patitanam pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo
Vaishnava
Hare
Vrinda
Ki Jai.
Bhagavad Gita Granth ki
Ki
Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
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 Jai. प्रभु की जय।
Hare Krishna.